Prince of Thorns is the first book in the Broken Empire series by Mark Lawrence. It came out recently in 2011 and was nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award for Best Fantasy, losing to George R.R. Martin's A Dance with Dragons, and there's certainly no shame in that. People even compared the story to something that Martin would write himself, and have compared the main character, an angry 14-year-old prince named Jorg, to Joffrey Baratheon. It earned high marks from critics for the captivating characters and dark setting, so I know I'm going against the grain here, but I didn't really like this book. To cut to the chase, my biggest problem with the book was the main character himself, the cunning prince Jorg Ancrath. Born to a noble family, he was only 10 when his carriage was attacked by soldiers from a neighboring kingdom. He spent hours laying in a patch of briar thorns, from which he witnessed the murder of his younger brother and the subsequent rape and murder of his mother. Sounds like the start of a really dark but really entertaining backstory, except we don't get his backstory up front. We see Jorg years later, having run away from home, and now he leads a pack of bandits who raid the countryside. And that's where the problem lies. Part of the appeal of this kind of story is the cautionary angle, in which we see the hero descend into darkness to become the monster he's hunting. We don't get that with Jorg, he's already a monster. Within the first few pages, he knowingly lets his men wander off and rape some farm girls just because they weren't able to steal enough treasure from a mildly successful raid of innocent, beleaguered civilians. Some people have mistakenly called Jorg an anti-hero. No, these are the actions of a villain. An anti-hero is a flawed hero, someone who lacks conventional heroic attributes but still tries to do good, if maybe in a morally dubious way. Jorg isn't some dark loner fighting his own battle his own way or running solo because he doesn't agree with some of the hero's methods. He's clearly a villain. He's sworn revenge against the king whose men murdered his mother and brother, but because he's so selfish and angry, I can't really say we're watching an anti-hero fight a villain. Instead, we're watching a villain fight a different villain. Now, given his young age, it's not unreasonable for a character to wind up like this. He's so driven by vengeance and so neglected by an emotionally absent father that this was the inevitable result. During a time when he should have been discovering himself, he was instead forced to overcome trauma all alone, and all the while let the darkness consume him. However, we're supposed to sympathize with him and hope he overcomes his troubles. The reason why a detestable character like Joffrey Baratheon works so damn well is because we're not supposed to like him. He's a monster that we want to see dead, and he does a great job stirring our emotions. Jorg's goal is understandable. He's a brilliant tactician, he's ambitious, and he's ballsy as hell, though that's later called into question of just how in control of himself he really is. But because he's willing to be so cruel, so vindictive, and frankly so evil, and because we're supposed to like him, he doesn't come across as an appealing character to me. If we had gotten his dark past earlier, and if he didn't let his men rape, then I would have liked him much more. Okay, that turned into much more of a character analysis than I intended. Moving on to the rest of the book. I'll say that I didn't really mind the writing style, but it didn't pop out at me. The best thing about it were the flashbacks we got to Jorg's past so we could understand how he turned out the way he did. They would show up every few chapters and would shine a little more light into what Jorg was, which I would have appreciated more if not for the previously mentioned reasons. Still, the story held my attention for long enough that I was able to finish it. I also wasn't crazy about the plot. I won't go into too much detail, because spoilers, but it really dragged along. The start was a little slow, which I can deal with, but it took about a third of the book for the plot to really start. And when it does get going, it starts taking all these detours left and right. These will likely lead into other plot lines in later books, but for now, a lot of points felt tacked on. And of course, there are the side characters. Now, I'm going to mention a small spoiler here, so skip to this time if you want to avoid it. Most of Jorg's bandits are the same dim-witted thug archetype. The only one who's different is a guy called the Nubin. He's the strong, silent type, but still manages to somewhat fill that father role that Jorg never really had. He was my favorite character of the book, but then he died in combat about halfway through. This was such a waste in potential that I wanted to give up on the book by this point. The only other character worth mentioning is Jorg's father, the emotionally absent king. The man has effectively abandoned Jorg after the prince ran away from home, and sends him on a suicide mission when the plot gets started. He wasn't included in the book very much, but he was completely detestable. Of course, he was written to be a bad person, so I didn't mind reading about him as much. It'll be a while before I get back into this series, though I have both King of Thorns and Emperor of Thorns waiting for me. Like I said, the biggest flaw in this book is Jorg. Characters are important to me, and since I didn't like him, I wasn't really invested. There is something to the world though, and a scene later in the book gives evidence that there's something hidden from everyone, like a long-lost secret, but at this point, that could go anywhere. Overall, Prince of Thorns was kind of meh. Some people might like it, but I'm not one of them. So, have you read the book? What did you think? If not, do you want to read it now? Whatever your thoughts, comment below and stay tuned for more.